Hello, I am Cody Ellingham, and this is the Transformation of Value podcast. This show is brought to you by Swarbricks, the first law firm in New Zealand to accept Bitcoin for legal services. The Swarbricks team are Bitcoiners, and they are knowledgeable about the legal aspects of Bitcoin in New Zealand, as well as general legal advice. Swarbricks offers a 20% discount for services paid in Bitcoin. Find out more at swarbricks.co.nz/Bitcoin. Now, in today's episode, I talk with Oscar Mary, co-founder of Fountain, one of the most popular podcasting 2.0 apps. We talk about the future of open podcasting and breaking out from the walled gardens of big tech, how the Bitcoin Lightning Network can enable streaming value directly to content creators, and we also discuss some of the upcoming features that the Fountain team are working on. Fountain has been a big part of the journey of this show, with many of you supporting my work from the beginning by streaming Satoshis and commenting on episodes, which gave me a lot of encouragement to keep doing the proof of work. I do hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, please send me an email at hello@thetransformationofvalue.com. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, on to the show. Alrighty, mate. Thanks for jumping on. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good. What's the time over there?
It's 8:30 p.m.
Oh, I guess it's summertime though, so you've got still a bit of daylight out there.
Just about, yeah. Although it's mostly dark now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a nice early start for me, but it's nice just coming into springtime. So beautiful blue twilight morning. But Oscar, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you jumping on. You founded the Podcasting 2.0 app, Fountain, in 2021, along with Nick Malster, after being inspired by Adam Curry's Podcasting 2.0 project. I use Fountain almost every day. I love it. Big fan. I always recommend it to people. At a high level, I am actually just really keen to dive into what Podcasting 2.0 means for you to start with, and then I'm hoping to explore a little bit more about what it means for the creator economy, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks so much for having me on, Cody. I really appreciate it. I guess Podcasting 2.0 is a great place to start. So maybe I'll just give a high-level overview and then, talk a bit about what it means to me, what it means to Fountain, and kind of how we see it developing. So essentially, Podcasting 2.0 is an organization dedicated to preserving open podcasting. It was set up by Adam Curry, who co-invented podcasting back in the day, and Dave Jones. And the two of them, along with the wider Podcasting 2.0 community, have been working over the past 2-3 years to essentially do two things. The first, which is more on the actual podcast index side, is to preserve the open nature of podcasting. And so the primary way that they do this is they offer an open index of all of the podcasts that exist for apps like Fountain, but also third-party services to actually go and access those podcasts. That's the first thing. And then the second is to really extend open podcasting and start to introduce new cool features that we haven't seen before in podcasting, because although the medium was actually invented, almost 20 years ago, we haven't seen that many new features come along over the past, let's say, decade. And so the Podcasting 2.0 organization, along with the podcast index, have started to introduce new features into podcasting via their official namespace, which many apps and hosting providers support. So some of the features that they've introduced are things like chapters, so you can really easily navigate the episode to the part that you want to listen to. Tags like transcript, so that you can follow along with the transcript as you're listening. Tags like location and person, so you can see more metadata about the episode you're listening to. And of course, one of the ones we're really excited about is the value tag. And this is where we use the Bitcoin Lightning Network to enable listeners to, support their favorite creators, give value back. Listeners can do this in two ways. Number one, you can send a one-off payment with a message, which is called a boost. And the other one is you can stream money for every minute that you listen, based on how much you think that episode is worth. So to summarize, Podcasting 2.0 is number one, dedicated to keeping podcasting open and not controlled by any one tech giant. And then number two, it's to extend podcasting, introduce new features, such as the ones I've just talked about. And I think we've made incredible progress as a community over the last 2 years. And there's even more exciting stuff coming down the road in the short term and in the long term, which happy to talk more about. And I guess for me personally, you asked about what it means to me. It's just, I think that podcasting is an incredible medium because, it's spoken word audio. You feel a really close connection with the host as they're talking, and you get all of the kind of emphasis, personality, and tone from the speaker that really can help land the ideas that are being communicated in the episode. Also, I'm from London. I do a lot of commuting around the city. It's also just great because you can fill the dead time with it. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And there's something there you touched on, which I wasn't aware of actually, which is around that open index approach. And I do recall now reading something around how Apple had moved to an API system as opposed to an open RSS feed, and how that presented challenges and sort of almost created a wall around what was considered, the podcast ecosystem. So that also links into this idea of kind of censorship, where podcasts are hosted, that sort of thing. So just drilling a little bit more into that, is podcasting 2.0 almost a reaction to that walling off and that kind of these tech giants trying to kind of dominate and own that space? Or do you know sort of much about that side of it?
Yeah, exactly. So in Apple's case, for many years, credit to Apple. In the past, they did incredible things for podcasting. They helped birth the industry because of their support within the iPod and the iPhone. So they've done amazing things for podcasting. But over time, there was a big dependency that fell on Apple because so many podcast apps would actually use the Apple API as the single source of truth for, what podcasts are available, what episodes are available for those podcasts. And I think that's where, Adam Curry kind of came in and saw that as a potential threat to open podcasting, whereby one company has so much control that they can just, turn off part of the API or limit certain features. So I think, podcasting fundamentally has always been built on open RSS. So the podcast index just takes essentially what Apple were doing within their walled garden and open that up to everybody in a way where the incentives for their organization are not, tied to the adoption of, for example, Apple Podcasts. So yeah, I think it creates a much kind of more stable, open foundation for podcasting to grow. We've seen with many tech platforms as well over the past, few years that if you're building a product on one of the big tech platforms' APIs, there's a huge risk that they're just going to either turn off that API or massively increase the price. And so I think for developers, such as us, building on top of podcast index APIs is a lot more reliable. And we're also happy to contribute back to the community in terms of what we're doing too.
Yeah. With some of these new tags and new features, things like chapters, transcripts, and the value tag, is there things like that have already been built out, I guess, by other companies on, as part of the RSS standard for podcasting that that are not encompassed by podcasting 2.0?
Yeah, there have been, the big example here is Spotify. Obviously, Spotify have built certain features into their app, things like, polls is one they've talked about before. They do actually have like some kind of basic form of comments, although it doesn't work very well. So yes, in answer to your question, some of these companies have tried to build it just within the confines of their walled garden. But the problem with doing that in the podcasting space is podcasting is unique in that it's highly, highly fragmented. So you have a huge long tail of different apps, and you also have a massive amount of different hosting companies. And so if you try to build, for example, a social feature and you only build it in one app, even if it's Spotify that has, 30%-ish market share, the features are never really going to work, because for you as a podcaster to say, hey guys, like come and interact with me and interact with the rest of the audience in Spotify, immediately you're putting a disadvantage on all of your audience that listen on another app. And podcasting is a very personal experience. People like their apps for, very kind of niche reasons. Maybe they've used that app for a long time. And so I think that's why you've seen some of the experiments with new features in podcasting fail when they're confined to the big platforms. The good thing about introducing these features through an open standard, an open spec that anybody can build against, and having Podcast Index as that kind of central authority that looks after the spec, it means that if a hosting company, for example, adds support for chapters, the chapters that you define as a podcaster in your RSS feed, they're available in, multiple apps. And as we build out features that are a little bit more dynamic, like comments, cross-app comments, things like that, obviously the payments through value for value, the fact that these can work cross-app is actually the kind of key thing that I think is having success and will make it more successful going forward. That's the key difference.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, that there would be, a central entity that is able to facilitate an open source approach and a development methodology, I guess similar to some of the web standards and perhaps even similar to some of the Bitcoin development proposals and things like that, where new things can be proposed and developed. Looking at the value tag, though, in particular, tell me more about that. I know you've got the streaming going on in Fountain, which is really powerful. How does that work? Is that the sort of thing that, say, a Spotify or a Apple podcast could implement if they decided they wanted to?
Yeah, for sure. All of the tags in the Podcasting 2.0 namespace can be adopted by anybody. The really cool thing about using the Bitcoin Lightning Network to facilitate this, though, is as a podcaster, you have the choice to be completely self-hosted in everything that you do. So you can, set up a server, host your own RSS feed, you can run your own Lightning node, and you can just, the way the value tag works is you can just take the pub key of your Lightning node, assuming it supports key send, which most of the implementations do. And then you can just put that pub key into your RSS feed. So you don't even really need, a third-party company to enable receiving payments as a podcaster. Obviously, Fountain makes it easy for podcasters through our podcaster wallet, and there's other services out there that do that as well. But yeah, any of the big companies, Apple, Spotify, could join the party and get involved. I doubt they will, especially Spotify, because they've invested so much in their exclusivity strategy. But yeah, it's completely open and anyone can, join in and build a feature on top of it.
Yeah, well, I am keen to talk a little bit more about Fountain and your project there. But just to clarify here, so value for value and the way that works within the RSS spec, that is designed with Lightning in mind?
So it's actually designed in an extensible way. The primary, as it was being designed, everybody had Lightning and specifically KeySend in mind, because realistically, there isn't another payment method that works in an open way that also lets you send fractions of a penny per minute or a penny per minute. You wouldn't be able to do that with anything else. So it's designed with Bitcoin and Lightning in mind. However, the spec is extensible if you wanted to introduce some other payment system. Personally, I don't think there ever will be, but it is extensible.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And you mentioned the comments as well, and thinking back, that it really does make a big difference. I enjoy with this show, seeing comments come through, people can post and share their thoughts. That also feeds back into the RSS feed. Like, is that the sort of thing that would say, if someone was on another Podcasting 2.0 compatible app, they would also see those comments? How does that work?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting topic, and kind of I'll go into it. So right now, the short answer is no. So the comments feature that you see in Fountain right now is unique to Fountain because we basically took the step of, hey, we think these boosts, these, payments with a message they're not just valuable for the podcaster, they're actually incredibly valuable for other listeners for two reasons. One, if listeners can interact with each other, members of the same audience, then they can, it's a nice experience to be able to, like a comment from another audience member or reply to another audience member, may start a conversation. But more importantly than the engagement and the interaction, it's actually the discovery signal. Because one of the things about podcasting is over time, as you get into it as a listener, you build up a long list of shows that you're subscribed to. And so, I have like 10 plus episodes that turn up in my episodes feed in Fountain every day. It's just unrealistic that I'm ever going to listen to them all. So seeing another user that I follow on Fountain, or even, a trending boost, which we show in the feed, that's a great signal to me that that episode is worth listening to. And so right from the start, we were thinking about how can we, surface the boost in the app. And we do this, in your home feed, we do this on the episode page to provide that discovery signal to tell other users that this episode's worth listening to. And right from the start, when we did this, we always envisioned this working cross app. It doesn't work cross app right now entirely, although if you send a boost from certain other podcasting 2.0 apps like Curiocaster, for example, that boost will, and you have a split to Fountain, then we will create a comment out of that and display it on the episode page. So that's why sometimes you might see comments from other apps on the episode pages. However, you can't currently, a user from Fountain can't reply to a user from another podcasting 2.0 app right now. It doesn't work. And that is a bit of a flaw. One of the things we're actually working on right now, though, is we are integrating Nostr into Fountain such that every boost and every comment is actually a Nostr note. And then, not only will users from other podcasting 2.0 apps that implement Nostr and kind of conform to the spec, not only will users from those apps be able to reply and we have a conversation between different podcasting apps, but also the discovery signal that I talked about in terms of, this boost, this comment from this user is telling me that this episode is worth listening to. That can go out into the wider Nostr ecosystem as well and show up in the normal feed. So yeah, we think Nostr is the solution to the cross-app comments problem within podcasting. And the beauty of this is it works so well with RSS. So it's really easy because we have the podcast index and because we have this process that we've been going through over the past 2 years of introducing new tags, formally adopting them, writing out the spec and all agreeing it as part of the community. I think there's a really good chance that we'll be able to get this working. So in the future, these comments, these boosts that people are leaving in Fountain or any other apps, or even just on websites, will be able to kind of spread out through the Nostr network and provide that discovery for podcasters, which is, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here. So straight away, I think the comments really do add a lot of value, as we mentioned before. Historically, though, something like YouTube or these centralized platforms, the comments is often quite a lot of value there, but it's all contained within the silo. By bringing that comment approach and that almost social layer to podcasting, I think there's certainly something there that's really special, and I do think that is important. And at a higher level, the idea of podcasts, long form content is kind of what the world needs right now. These kind of bigger discussions and kind of getting away from sound bites and TikTok and into something that's actually meaningful and a discourse. So that's really powerful. But looking at this broader idea of the social layer and in particular with Fountain, like it seems like this is kind of a new space, like YouTube. It doesn't really have it, but say, I don't know, something like Reddit, Instagram, you've got followers, you've got likes, you've got this almost social, or even Twitter, sort of this social layer to it. And you can judge someone who's got 0 followers compared to someone who's got 1 million followers. There's a difference there. How do you see that dynamic fitting in with, I guess, your business model and the space more broadly, that sort of social layer, baller boosts, these kinds of things, like they feel like they're quite a new function that we haven't really had before, and so people are experimenting with it. But how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the fundamentally new thing that we have here is the ability to objectively assign value to interactions that happen in social media. Because before, if you look at any of these social media companies, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, every action is an attention signal. And there's no way to distinguish between the attention signal that you give and the attention signal that I give. We could both like a tweet or a YouTube video. We could both share a tweet or a YouTube video. But you might have received 50 times more value than me from that video, but yet they're counted the same. And also, the person that didn't actually receive any value from it, but they were just shocked or outraged by the content that they saw enough to share it, that will also count exactly the same as you, who maybe, had a kind of, life-changing perspective. So I think now that we have the ability to objectively measure value in a dynamic way on every action that occurs, I think we can start, really recommending content in a way that the incentives are much more aligned with, I think, the outcomes everybody wants to see on social media. Like, it's amazing, on YouTube, for example, when you discover like a hidden gem and you absolutely love the content and you're like, wow, this was amazing. But then you get stuck in the recommendation systems and you get fed all of these clickbait headlines. And, it's very difficult to find those hidden gems because they don't garner that much of an attention signal compared to the stuff that's shocking and clickbaity. So I think that's the real powerful change here. And I think what we've got in Fountain at the moment is just like super early days. Like, yeah, obviously we have the baller boosts. So, if you can get your favorite show onto the baller boost leaderboard, that will be visible to every Fountain user for the next 3 days. So it's an amazing thing to do in terms of discovery. And then we have, the likes, and we can rank content, and our likes are, paid likes with sats as well. So we can rank content based on that. But yeah, really it's just the beginning. And I think I'm hoping that, again, with things like Nostr and that, we can actually do this kind of ranking, this value ranking, not just on Fountain, but also across app as well. Because again, maybe, that signal currently gets, it gets stuck in one particular app. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I think that the value ranking and the signal that we can provide is going to really surface some the best content.
Yeah, no, I remember thinking before I was using Nostr very much, I was thinking about how this can apply to other mediums as well. I was playing around with Instagram and thinking, really the likes, they're almost this kind of fiat placebo of a real engagement. And what that leads to, as you know, is kind of skewed, skewed content that's designed to get the engagement. And I mean, we're seeing that broadly in society, but also, just in my personal experience, people going for that clickbait type approach. But I moved back towards more meaningful content, and also looking at, I do a lot of photography, post photos up, and it's like, how does that relate to someone? What did they get from it? This is a really powerful way, as we said, this kind of value for value. How much do you value it? And again, you are seeing this emerge. I'm a big fan of like Stacking News and a couple of these other services, playing around with Nostr as well. but again, it does feel like it's a new model in a way, and so we haven't maybe seen what it looks like more broadly. So how does this work, say, with people who are maybe not so into Bitcoin? Like, how do they get started with it? Because at the moment it certainly is like you've got to have a bit of a knowledge of how it works. Maybe you probably already know a little bit about Bitcoin to actually have the ability to play around with Lightning and that sort of thing. I mean, how do you see this going beyond that wall of, say, the Bitcoin world into a more general population?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and it's something that we think about a lot. And I think, there is a fundamental reality, which is it is incredibly difficult for somebody that doesn't know anything about Bitcoin to start using an app that has Bitcoin at its core. The most obvious barrier to, adopting something like Fountain is the KYC that you have to go through if you're buying Bitcoin for the first time. We have the ability to top up your wallet with a bank card directly from the app, but you have to go through a light KYC. It's through a partner called MoonPay, and that's the only option we have, essentially. And I think, in some countries it's better than others, because for example, if you look in the US, you've got Cash App, 40 million users or whatever, and they have Lightning there. So, you can just tell them, hey, just go, buy some Bitcoin and Cash App, transfer it across the Fountain. It's a little bit easier. But for example, here in the UK, we don't really have that option. So it is a big issue. But part of me just believes that this is going to, Fountain is growing at the same time that Bitcoin grows, and it's going to be slow, but just as more and more people adopt Bitcoin, as more and more of the traditional finance companies offer Bitcoin support in their apps, the new kind of mobile banking apps. Eventually, I think it will be easy enough where the concept of transferring sats from your mobile banking app into an app that you want to use them, I think that will become, more easy. But it is a struggle now. And then I think the second thing is just, we need to kind of hide the fact that it's Bitcoin in the app, in a sense. Like the way we've done it in Fountain today is we actually rarely mention the word Bitcoin other than in the onboarding once to explain what sats are. And then after that, it's just sats, it's just this like fun podcast payment money that you have in the app. And it kind of feels less scary then. But yeah, I think the adoption and the onboarding of Bitcoin is definitely a challenge. And then more on value for value, I think, again, that is challenging because it's a completely new way of doing things. Like, people are not used to thinking about the value they receive from a piece of content and kind of judging how much that was worth to them and how much they feel like they should give back. We do it in restaurants all the time if we decide what tip we want to leave. But I think when it comes to online content, we don't have that thought pattern. So again, it is difficult to kind of get around that on your first try of one of these products. But I think there's, over time, and definitely over the past year or so, I think we've done a really good job. And when I say we, I mostly mean like the podcasters that are having success on Fountain, of actually communicating it, asking people to send value back, reading out the boosts and letting the audience know actually how much it means to you, not just receiving the money, but receiving the comments, receiving the feedback, driving that discovery signal. So yeah, I think the two biggest challenges are onboarding to Bitcoin and not putting people off that way, and getting the thesis of value for value across and explaining it properly. But I do think it's just a better way of doing things, and the fact that you can do both of those things in an open way, and apps can talk to each other, I think it's inevitable that it will go more mainstream.
Yeah, well, a couple of things, and kind of my lived experience with this. I started this show in December, I think last year, and for the first bit there, I was really blown away. Getting support from the New Zealand Bitcoin community and people listening to the show, and boosting it. And for me, what I saw, that it was Signal. And so I had done a few other things, as I mentioned, I do a lot of photography. I've done stuff on Instagram. I had another podcast a couple of years ago looking more at creativity and those sort of topics. And trying to monetize that when it's a very niche audience, it's not, millions of downloads. It's impossible, basically. It's like you're either zero or you're a million. There's not really that middle ground. But what I was blown away with was like the very first episode I ever released, it's getting boosted some sats. And that really changed my outlook, and I thought, man, this is actually something I need to invest in. I really need to take it seriously. I want to try my best because I've already got people who are willing to give back. And that really just changes the listener-creator dynamic. And in a way, I think that, it led me, to try and push the show to make it more regular and to make it into a thing. And now it's become what it is today. But really starting off, it gave me a lot of encouragement and a lot of direction as to what's working. People were able to tell me things in the comments, and I was able to sort of change it based on that feedback. And then I think, man, if I had done this on YouTube, it would never have gotten that at all. Maybe it would have gotten a comment or two, but it wouldn't have had that, hard money backing to actually say this is what you need to be doing. And that really, I don't know, that it's like a new way of looking at things, like letting that value signal really drive you instead of the like ratio, which again is fiat, right? A downvote and upvote, it really doesn't mean anything. So that really made a big difference for me. But I wonder, at a broader level, the UX of value for value, as you say, that it's kind of hard to get into that mode. But maybe this is a generational thing, because certainly, something like Spotify paying for music, like in that way, was a new concept at one point, and so, but now it's become quite normalized, subscription services and that sort of thing. So, I wonder if we're just sort of in a discovery phase where we sort of find out what's working, what doesn't work. Maybe there's, ideas around how people want to do value for value that have, been validated, maybe some that don't work as well. And we're just still on this sort of UX discovery journey of like how you can get people to engage with each other. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I think, the phrase UX discovery journey is definitely how I feel as well. Still a lot of work to do there in terms of the Fountain app UX. But yeah, I think, one of the really cool things, especially for newer podcasts as well, one of the really cool things is, let's say you've released 10 episodes, right, of a new show, and you're trying to make a decision. Do I want to continue this? Do I want to actually, dedicate more time to it? Am I enjoying it? Are my listeners enjoying it? What I need some information to make that decision. And with the traditional tools in podcasting, you've got your download numbers, which, they mean something, but really they're kind of ambiguous. You don't really see any people behind those numbers. And especially in the early days, probably the numbers aren't going to be that big. So they don't really help you make that decision. And then you've got things like reviews, but, it's very kind of like cumbersome to leave a review. And also you get a bunch of like negative reviews as well. You get like weird reviews, and they're not really like surfaced in a way where you feel you can have a conversation with that person, because they're kind of separated from the actual podcast app that you're listening in, and there's no kind of feedback there. And then you have social media as well, but that also gets quite hidden, and there can be a lot of negativity there as well. One of the interesting things we've seen is that because it costs money to actually, send a boost or leave a comment, everything's much more positive, because really the people that want to do that are the people that have had a good experience. And, they might still send some, constructive criticism to kind of point out some things that they enjoyed or they didn't enjoy. So I think generally the feedback mechanism is much better. But the really key thing is distinguishing and understanding where the value is. Like maybe in those first 10 episodes, you had one that like absolutely nailed it. And it was like the format that is going to turn this show into kind of a big success in terms of the value you provide to your audience and what you want to get out of it yourself. If somebody if you get an average, maybe you don't even get a boost every episode, maybe at the beginning, maybe you get like one. But if you get one with a high sat value, a high amount that says, wow, this episode was incredible, definitely the best one, I love this about it. Suddenly you have so much information to take away into your decision-making process about what's working and what's not. Like that's such a higher signal compared to even a review on Apple Podcasts or a comment on social media. The fact that someone's actually taken the time to send real money to you.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. I'm just curious, are reviews currently just like closed off? So like Apple has their review system, and other podcasts like, you know, Google and that have their own review system. That's not part of the RSS standard?
No, yeah, it's not part of the RSS standard. So they're kind of like, yeah, each walled garden has its own review system, and the key thing is that there's no you know, feedback mechanism there. Like you have no way to interact with that user. You don't really know who they are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still, I guess, you know, what I'm interested in here is how this transforms and how this evolves over time. And, you know, I look at, say, Stacking News. I've got the cowboy hats. You know, if you tip every day, you know, you zap someone every day, you get the cowboy hat, and it almost becomes this kind of gifting economy. You know, reputation is important. You build that up. You know, there's hard money backing that up, and it's sort of, as I said, it feels like it's a new model. You know, the numerology as well, you know, 421 sats or, you know, 210 sats, and kind of there is a sort of a culture emerging there, which I don't know, it's kind of still in a very nascent stage, but it's quite exciting, like what that looks like, you know, that kind of reputation. As you say, you got to put your money where your mouth is, and so there's not an incentive to just troll or to do a meaningless comment. It's really, you know, about that thoughtfulness. And I mean, it's almost utopian, but it kind of goes back to the old internet in a way, sort of, you know, people, you know, carefully thinking about what they're going to write before they post it. And in a way, it's quite positive and quite healthy to return back to that sort of considered way of engaging with each other, you know, as we consider the broader issues that we're facing in the world. So, I mean, there's definitely some positive stuff in there.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, as I said earlier, I've always been a massive just believer in the medium of podcasts. And I think it's nice to have a social experience that is separated from, you know, the chaos of Twitter or the rest of, you know, normal social media, because you can choose to be, you know, podcasting is so niche, you know, you can choose to be in, you know, your community of the show you like and just interact there. And I think that's really nice. And then coupled with the fact that, as you say, you have hard money backing it up, it leads to much more positive interactions. Yeah.
And I think also that the broader, the understanding of like what a platform is, I think is maybe also evolving, because, you know, I look at, say, my podcast, you know, list of, you know, the queue that I've got lined up, and it's fully curated, you know, that's what I've chosen to listen to. But you go on YouTube or Twitter, and, you know, you're going to get mugged by, you know, everything. And you've got your subscriptions, but you've also got this feed that is embedded into everything where you get recommendations. But in a way, podcasting is, I don't know, it's a lot more calming. You know, you've just got the stuff you want to listen to, and you're able to build those relationships with very, you know, because in a way it is a relationship where you're spending, you know, maybe hours listening to a topic, or, you know, someone talk about something, and there's a lot of responsibility, you know, on the creators for that. But that dynamic is I think a lot more healthy. Where you can go into a topic that you're really interested in, whatever it may be. And you don't see this kind of degenerate kind of just clickbait stuff, and it's really obvious if you ever try to go into YouTube but you've just gone, you know, you're not signed in, you're just kind of on a fresh YouTube page, and you just look at the stuff that comes up, and it is so low level. It's quite mind-blowing, and you realize like how much you've kind of been able to get away from that just by having a subscription. But I don't know, like, just this, you know, engagement with niche topics, getting away from broad kind of because in a way, even though it's internet media, it's still broadcast in a way. It's sort of, because YouTube, you need millions of downloads for it to be profitable. And so it's going to tend to that over time. But as I mentioned, within the first episode of a tiny New Zealand Bitcoin podcast, I was able to get some value. To get that, to get, I don't know, 1,000 Satoshis worth of value on YouTube, like how many downloads do you need to get to that point? I think that ratio is really different. And in a way, it's just a lot more healthy. You don't need to try and get to that, 100,000 download mark. However you can actually keep it small and tight, and people are going to want to support that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the YouTube, example is just because I've talked about YouTube for quite a while now, but even recently, now they've introduced shorts. So, I still watch YouTube and I go on my subscriptions tab, and it's just filled with shorts with these little clips on nothing. And it's just all of the YouTubers are just doing that to, play nice with the algorithm and, follow that attention kind of grabbing, incentive that YouTube have set up. I think the real challenge and what we want to do with Fountain is we want to keep all of the amazing things about podcasting that we just talked about. You curate your feed, in your library in Fountain. You curate it by, subscribing to certain feeds that you like. And then also, adding other random episodes that you might have heard about. I think what we really want to do is keep that control of the library, but also give you the opportunity to discover new content, because, it's very easy as a podcast listener, especially when you're getting, multiple new episodes in per day, to just think, oh, okay, I'm done. I have everything that I want to listen to. But there is some incredible podcast content out there. For me, I remember when I first discovered Dan Carlin's podcast, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So there's always cool content out there. And maybe you don't even want to subscribe to the whole feed. Maybe you just want to check out one episode or something. And I think the best signal for that is, somebody that somebody that you follow, but then also somebody that has actually, voluntarily given their money to say thank you to that creator. So I think combination of those two things, if we can bring that into the app in a way where you still have control over your library, that's the real goal for us.
And I guess that in terms of Fountain, I mean, yourself and Nick, is there anyone else on the team? Are you guys just doing it with the two of you? Have you got a bit of a team helping you build this out, or?
Yes. Yeah, so we've got a bit of a team now. We do have a bit of funding now, which is great. And so we're a team of 4 right now. Still a very small team. It's myself, who, I originally built the app. I'm the lead developer of the app. Nick, who does kind of design, brand, marketing, and, speaking to podcasters and getting their feedback, because that's really important. And then we have another developer and a customer support person as well, because we get a lot of tickets, as you can imagine.
Yeah. No, I follow the Telegram and that, and I must commend you guys. You're doing a great job, and keeping keeping the updates coming, and working through it. And you do have a few sort of longer range. We've discussed a couple of things you're working on, but in terms of, I guess, your next big push, is there anything that you're sort of looking forward to in terms of features or sort of where the app is going?
Yeah. So there's a lot coming. So we actually have a version coming out this week, which is Fountain 0.8. So it might actually be out by the time this episode is live. In fact, it probably will be.
Yeah.
Fountain 0.8 is really exciting because we're introducing music into the app. So one of the new tags that Podcast Index have, put forward is something called a value time split. And this is incredibly cool. What it allows you as the podcaster to do is, in a given time segment of the episode, you can switch the value block, and you can send all of the funds that get sent at that moment to a different destination. And this applies really well to music, because you can kind of create these radio shows or like DJ shows that are podcasts, you listen to music, you listen to the host talk about the music, and then at the point that the music plays, the money goes to the artist. And obviously, this problem of incentives and monetization on the internet is an even bigger problem for musicians, because most musicians it's their full-time career, and they're trying to make it. So Fountain zero point 0.8 introduces music podcasts, so you can listen to these shows like Boostergram Ball from Adam Curry is a great one to kind of highlight how it all works. You can see the value time splits in Fountain, so you can see like what the tracks are that are playing and where the money's going. And then obviously the money goes off to the artist if you send a boost or while you're streaming. And then the really cool thing is we've actually implemented it so that you can just save the music tracks to your library, and you can come back to them and listen, and you can boost later and stuff. So yeah, we've got music in Fountain 0.8. We've also got a bunch of UI updates and performance updates here. So that's 0.8 this week. And then as I said, we're working on the Nostr integration, which should be coming sometime in September. And then the final thing we're working on is a complete redesign of the app. So we're kind of, starting again, blank slate, and we're redesigning everything just to make things a little bit more, spacious, easy to use, cleaner, all of that kind of design aspect, which, we've done an okay job so far, but we've never really kind of had the designer. We've just been, building on top of features and building on top of features. So for anyone who's a Fountain user, I do apologize for that. But yeah, Fountain 1.0, complete redesign, and that should look and feel amazing to use. So that should be out in October.
Nice. No, that's great. And I guess sort of finishing, mate, perhaps on one sort of more broad question, if that's all right. Really, I'm interested this idea of value for value and what's possible with the Lightning Network. I guess as a developer working on this, what is the reality of things like pay-as-you-go APIs, using Lightning for things, music streaming or video streaming or any of these services? Like, what is the actual experience trying to build that on the ground? Like, can we expect to see more and more services using this? Is it actually quite challenging to build stuff like this out? Is there any other work that needs to happen even on the Lightning spec for this to become a reality?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I would say it's getting easier and easier by the month. When we first started, it was quite, challenging with like the actual Lightning side, lots of failed payments and stuff like that. But now, there's some great service providers out there. Like we actually use one called Zebedee. So if there's any developers listening, like go check them out. They provide like an API suite for building Lightning payments into any product. And I think, ultimately, the value that Fountain adds and the product that we build is not going to be dependent on the actual low-level payment infrastructure. It's at a higher level around the product, the UX, the flows, the experience. So it's useful for us to kind of leave the more low-level payment infrastructure to another service that can kind of manage and scale that, and just focus on the actual podcast listening experience, the onboarding experience, the social features, the discovery features. So yeah, I think it's much easier than it was. And there's more and more services popping up that offer these type of tools. And then in terms of Lightning specifically, I think the big one that I would like to see, which I'm pretty sure is coming down the line, is essentially offline, the ability to receive a payment non-custodially offline. Because right now, if you were running a Lightning wallet non-custodially on your phone, you would be able to send payments, in a self-sovereign way, but you wouldn't be able to receive payments if your phone was offline. So, if it had run out of battery or, it was on airplane mode or anything like that, you just wouldn't be able to receive payments. So that's why for podcasters, they'll tend to use a service like Fountain to receive their payments, because we manage all of that for them. But ultimately, it would be great if you could, do all of that in a kind of self-sovereign way, non-custodially. But that does require the offline payment received. So that's something I'm looking forward to being added.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you very much. Well, look, Oscar, I really appreciate your time and talking about this. As I said, I'm a big fan of Fountain, and it really blew my mind starting to use it, and just seeing the engagement, seeing the comments from people, being able to have those conversations, and I know you guys are working hard to to get this to push things forward and to introduce new features. But I've been a big fan of it, and it certainly made a big difference for this show. I don't know if this had just gone on as a normal podcast, and I hadn't have seen that, and I didn't see that feedback and that kind of signal in the early days. Who knows where things would have gone. But by having that facility to engage with people and to have feedback and value for value, it made a big difference, and I look forward to seeing that scale out to people more broadly, and just to create a more healthy ecosystem for creators and for audiences to engage with each other, because I think we're certainly in a strange place in the world, but it gives me a lot of hope that value for value as a concept can be more broadly disseminated throughout the world. So great stuff.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Cody. I really appreciate you saying that. It's always really good to hear. And I think as well, like for people listening as well, like we need that feedback as well as Fountain, as a Fountain team. So, if anyone's listening who does use Fountain, like please get in touch with us. Their feedback. As I said, we're working on the big 1.0 redesign. So if you have anything you'd like us to get into that, we're always open to adding stuff. So please give us feedback too, because there's a lot to do.
Final thing, Oscar, if people want to follow along, get in touch with you, or learn more about Fountain, where do you want to send them?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Merry Oscar. I'm on Nostr as well. You can search for me there, or you can just send me an email, oscar@fountain.fm. We also have a Telegram group for our beta testers. You can join that if you like. But please do get in touch if there's anything about the app that annoys you, and we'll try our best to fix it for you.
All right, sweet. Thank you very much, Oscar. Take care.
Cheers, Cody. Thanks for having me on. Bye.
Thank you for listening. I do hope you enjoyed the show. I am Cody Allingham, and that was The Transformation of Value. If you'd like to get in touch, please send me an email at hello@thetransformationofvalue.com, and I will get back to you.